أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم اللعين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين أما بعد. Respected listeners and viewers, I salute all of you. Assalamu Allaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, I'm going to be with you in a series of lectures or series of discussions concerning neighbor in Islam, the issue of a neighbor in Islam, or from the point of view of Islam, inshallah. So in this first session, I'm going to talk about who a neighbor is. Who do we refer to as a neighbor? Who do we refer to as a neighbor? Now, if you go through the Islamic literature, that is the Quran and Hadith, you find various descriptions of who a neighbor is. And the Hadith stipulates about the neighbor as someone who is 40, anybody in the distance of 40 houses from your house is a neighbor, as we read in one hadith where it is attributed to Imam Ali. He says that harimul masjidi arba'una zira'an wal jiwar arba'una daran wa min arba'ati jawanibiha. Imam Ali was saying that, this is a report attributed to Imam Ali. He was saying that the confines of a mosque, what we call a mosque proper, its confines, its how do you call it, the four sides of a masjid, okay, should be 40 yards. That is, if we say this is a masjid, before you go out of that masjid, if we say this is a masjid, before you go out of that masjid, you should be able to have 40 yards before you go out of the masjid. That is, the wall of the masjid should be 40 yards from the masjid itself. This is to preserve the sanctity of the mosque. Okay, masjid is a mosque. To preserve the sanctity of the mosque, if you build a mosque here, you should give 40 yards from the mosque before anything else should happen. So the confines of the mosque, the walls of the mosque should be 40 yards from the mosque itself, from all the four angles. Yeah, this is for the mosque. And it says for the neighbor, it is 40 houses from the four angles. That is 40 houses from the right, from the left, from the front, and then from the back. So if you are living in a place, any place at all, you find yourself, 40 houses from your house. On the right hand side are all your neighbors. On the left hand side, 40 houses on in front of you, in front of your house, 40 houses at the back of your house. All these houses constitute your neighbors. So whoever lives within this range is regarded as a neighbor to you. So whatever we are going to talk about in these sessions, we are going to talk about the rights of these people. The rights of these people, that is your responsibility towards these people. If we say these are the rights of somebody, it means that somebody has a responsibility to fulfill to that person. So if we say the rights of your neighbor, it means that we are talking about your responsibility towards the neighbor. Yes, you also have your own rights on that neighbor of yours, but what we are talking here is yourself, you, because everything starts from you. Everything starts from you. And if we are able to train ourselves to be good, each and everyone should start by their own selves, then inshallah each and everyone is going to be good, because if you are good, he is also good, they are also good. When we come out, indeed we are going to observe goodness, so nobody is going to cheat anybody. So it starts with you. So we are not talking about your right on someone. No, somebody's right on you. What is your responsibility? Because as the Holy Quran tells us, everyone shall hang his own deeds. وَكُلُّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي أُنُقِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. That will be on the day of Qiyamah, on the day of judgment. Everyone will carry his own burden. So nobody is going to ask you, what should Mr. A should have done to you, for you that he hasn't done. No, you are going to be asked, what did you do to Mr. B? Why did you do this to Mr. B? You are not going to be asked, why did Mr. B do this to you? No, he is going to answer that question. So we are emphasizing on the self. Each and every one of us should take a good care, and then be God-wary by our own selves, so that we will have a good society. So these are the rights of the neighbor we are going to look at. That is the rights of people who live 40 houses from your house, or from all the four corners of your house. So this, according to the hadith, the traditions, this is what we have concerning the neighbor. Then when you come to what we that is the Quran itself, the Quran also tells us about the category of neighbors, people who can be your neighbors, because the Quran talks about the closest neighbor, and also a neighbor who is very far from you. And we read this in Quran chapter 4 verse 36, where Allah says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, wa'budullaha wa la tushriku bihi shay'an wa bil walidayni ihsanan wa bizil qurba wal yatama wal masakin wal jari dhil qurba wal jari al junubi was sahibi bil jambi wa ibn sabili wa malakat aymanukum inna Allaha la yuhibbu man kana mukhtalan fakhura." I'm reading the translation from the Sahih International English Translation. He says, "Worship Allah and associate nothing with him, and to your parents do good, and to your relatives, orphans and needy." All these meaning you should do good to them. Then the near neighbor. So the Quran talks about the near neighbor. You have a near neighbor, a neighbor who is closer to you. And then the neighbor farther away, the neighbor who is far from you. So Quran talks about neighbors who are very close to you, and also neighbors who are very far away from you. Then these people, you should also be good to them, just as Allah commands you to be good to your parents, to your relatives, to orphans. You should be good to these people as well. Then the companions at your side, anybody who will be your companion, be good to them. The traveler, when you meet someone, you are on your way, be good to them. So they are all regarded as your neighbors, people who are closer to you. And those whom your right hands possess, they may be your people who work under you, or anything that you have power upon. Indeed, Allah does not like those who are self-deluding and boastful. So the Quran gives us a wider explanation of a neighbor. A neighbor, someone who may be closer to you, just as the hadith says, 40 houses from all the four corners. This is a close neighbor. There's also a neighbor who is father. Someone who is very far away from you. He can be your neighbor. Once you get in touch with him, then he is your neighbor. That's what the Quran is teaching us. So this tells us that wherever we find ourselves, we may be neighbors to one another. So Allah is saying, wherever you meet these people, don't harm them. Be good to them. Be good to them. Always be good to them. And then we can also see this in what we refer to as the Western law. They also have this concept in a very old case, where one Lord Atkins stated in a case concerning Donoghue versus Stevenson, where he makes a remark about who a neighbor is. And he says, a neighbor is a person, or there are persons who are so closely and directly affected by my acts. So anybody who is so close that will be affected by any act that I may act is regarded as a neighbor, that I ought reasonably to have them in contemplation. So any person who is so close to you and then may be affected by your act, any act at all, so you should contemplate them. You should have them in your mind, okay? To have them in contemplation as being so affected when I am directing my mind to the acts or omissions which are called in question. Any act that you will be doing, whether it is omission or commission, doing it or not doing. You should be mindful of people who may be affected by that act of yours. So this tells us that a neighbor, just as the Quran teaches us, can be anybody who is close or can be anybody who is very far. Once the person will be affected by your act, then that person is regarded as your neighbor. So the bottom line is, anyone who may be affected by your act is regarded as your neighbor. So you ought to be very careful. You have a responsibility towards that person. You shouldn't do anything that will harm that person. And that is what we shall be looking at in our subsequent sessions, inshallah. Till we meet in the next session. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.